Welcome to another edition of Shabbat Lounge. Today we're going to look at the role that we were meant to play from the beginning of creation. And that is the role of priest. If you've never heard of this, it all started back in the garden. Adam was created outside the garden, then brought into the garden. There also appears to be a second creation of man here. And you go back and read that account and see if you can see what I'm talking about. But there does appear to be a separate creation account of mankind in general, where a bunch of people are created, which makes sense because as a child I always wondered, how does Adam's children immediately find women to marry without flat out committing incest, which is against the Torah? So that is something that I think you got to wrestle with. If you say it's only Adam and Eve, then basically you are saying all these people committed incest completely. And at least in the account of Noah, there's some cousin separation there. So, but in Adam, it would just be brother and sister, and that's just gross and weird. I have a hard time wrapping my mind around that was approved and that's the way. I don't believe that Yahuwah would set up anything that forced people to violate Torah, especially from the very beginning. So, anyway. I also believe that Adam talked with Yahuwah every day. Adam knew all the commandments. He knew the feast. He knew about clean and unclean. All of those things were taught to him from the beginning, which is really amazing when you think about it. Most of us grew up with the impression that nothing is set in law until it's written down at Moses. But those forefathers, they knew those things. Adam knew them, and he taught them to his lineage. So anyway, in this creation account, I believe what Adam was supposed to do is Adam knew about Yahuwah. He was supposed to be a priest-like character to the people outside the garden and teach them about Yahuwah. To be a minister to them. Teach them Yahuwah's ways. Teach them Yahuwah's calendar. His feast. His moedim. His appointed times. That was the plan. And that has been the plan the entire time. And then you come across to Moses. And at Moses' time, you see the same thing. When the presence of God starts descending on the mountain and it looks fiery and kind of scary. The people on the ground, the boots on the ground are like, whoa, hold on. Moses, we don't want to go talk to that guy. He is scary. We want you to go be our representative. And so the plan was, Yahuwah was going to make them all priests and his representatives. And instead, they go back to their pagan ways and have a giant blood, sex, magic, some weird sex ritual, and they're dancing around the golden calf. The King James says they rose up to play, which was probably the pagan practices out of Egypt they were continuing to do. But an interesting side note is they build this golden calf, and if you go back and read it, it says, but we did it for you, God. And we can't do that. And I hear so many people say that about holidays and go, well, it's how I mean it. I do it for God. Man, it doesn't work that way. That's applying human logic and our weakness to something in which he says, don't do as the pagans do. So anyway, but there's this theme of him wanting to make the people priest. And they keep rejecting it. Not only do they reject it, they basically are getting married to Yahuwah on the mountain, Mount Sinai with Moses, and they immediately, during the service while he's watching, cheat on him. It is the biggest slap in the face you can ever have. You know, here he is. he thinks, and he's wanting to present his children with this incredible gift, and they do this to him, or the bride, this incredible gift, and they immediately turn their back on him. And then he has to institute this blood sacrifice thing, and he's like, you know what? I am going to make it such a ridiculous point of how many animals that you have to kill and shed the blood for, that you are going to get this. That something had to die to atone for your sin. And so he set up that sacrificial system, and Yeshua comes, fulfills that sacrificial system, and becomes the sacrifice once and for all, restoring us back to the right of priest. So basically what happened, Adam had dominion on the earth. And when he falls, when he sins, when he eats the fruit, he hands his authority of dominion that he had on the earth, hands it to Satan himself, the snake. And Satan, of course, took it and ran with it. And then when Yeshua dies, he is able to go face to face with Satan and take that back. He takes that mantle back and says, I've won this back for man. Man now again has dominion on the earth. And so that's kind of a synopsis of the whole thing. And that is why we don't have to call him any man rabbi, as Yeshua said. We don't have to have a pastor. We don't have to be under any tutelage of man. And it's time for people to wake up. Time to wake up that you don't have to be under these pretenses of being under someone. That what you need to be under is under Yahuwah's word, under his law, under his good and perfect Torah. Law was taught as a bad thing in churches. It's a good thing. It's the instructor. It teaches you the ways of the Father. It is the mark. And when we don't do the mark, we sin. So, ask any good church pastor, what is sin? And you're going to get some generic answer about what is sin. Basically, they're going to say, don't do bad stuff. But you kind of define what the bad stuff is. So, there's clearly some problems with this logic. The Torah defines sin. And that's what we got to go by. But anyway, I'm digressing. But it's just an interesting theme that you can see in the Bible, that all along we are supposed to be priests. And Yeshua restores that priesthood back to us. And we need to operate more as priests and kings than we do. So many of us have an orphan, homeless mindset. People, we're not orphans. We're not homeless. We're heirs to the king, and we should act like it. It is time to quit acting like we're beaten down and helpless and act like we're priests and kings in a kingdom. So I just leave you with that. Think about those things. Study those things. See if you can prove them. Read the Bible. See if it is to be true. Don't rely on men and what they say. Go back to the source. See what it says. Thank you for listening to Shabbat Lounge, and read your Bible.